It's an awesome job. Are you kidding? It's amazing.
In the books, throughout from book 1 all the way up to where we are now, with the latest one, there is a constant source of reference. We know Harry's snarky. He loves the sarcasm. He's
maybe a little bit.
Yeah, it's just a wee. Some of my favorite moments is when he's using sarcasm and commentary when he's quoting pop culture as a whole, right? And there's a ton of geek references, and like Buffy stuff, Star Wars, especially Star Wars. Throughout the whole thing, is that something that you're looking at it and you're going, I need this voice, and this voice is me, and it works? Is that, or you were just like, it's a natural fitter to just develop?
It wasn't something that I planned on from the get-go. It was just sort of something that grew up. By the time I realized, oh, wait a minute, the entire audience of the Dresden Files, basically it's a bunch of other geeks like me, and they love all the same shows, and they get all the jokes. I can show up somewhere and make a Firefly reference, or make a Star Wars reference, or make some obscure mathematics reference, and somebody's going to get it in the audience. They just are. And so once I realized that, it's like, okay, you know what? These are the people that have really have been my audience and have made me successful. I'm going to be gearing this stuff towards them, and also it's just fun that way, because that's kind of the way my sense of humor runs. So it works out.
Yeah, because that was one of the things I noticed when I started reading the books. I was talking to my girlfriend; she's also a big fan, and we were talking about it one time, and I was like, "It's like if I wrote it," because it's like this is exactly like the way that if I was to write something, if I had the talent to do it, this is what I would do. I would have a character who shoots his mouth off, and some of my favorite moments is like when he talks to the Earl King, and he can't stop himself.
Right? Yeah. It's huge, giant, scary. Yeah. Okay, that's one thing, but I still gonna lip off to you because that's who I am. Yeah.
And throw in a few Star Wars references that nobody gets, and then you hear like either Queen Mab or somebody just going, "What?"
Yeah, exactly. Well, of course they don't get it. They're all being big and serious and taking themselves seriously. Yeah, you wouldn't get a pop culture reference if it skittered up and laid an egg down your esophagus,
Yeah. A lot of characters in your book that's names are M.
Yes.
Molly, Murphy, Mouse, Mr., Mac.
Yeah. No, that just worked out that way.
Yeah?
It's in the middle of the alphabet, I figured there's got to be some kind of law of averages, some kind of mean of names that's worked out that way. But yeah, my beta readers are always like, you can't name the character that. Why not? Starts with M. Oh, you're right. Okay.
Yeah, because it's amazing, because so many of the major characters, Marcone and Murphy, Mab, and we don't know yet, but I'm pretty much assuming that Mac will be something as we go forward.
Well, you can assume that if you want to.
I know, it's like the CIA. Somebody would have to shoot me if he told me something. So
Right. Well, no, I mean, it's entirely possible. I don't know myself. I think I know, but maybe I don't.
Oh yeah, so you're still kind of playing loose and fast.
I don't tell myself anything. It's simpler that way. I can't be trusted.
So you're not George Lucasing it. You're going to claim like 30 years from now that I knew the whole thing right from the get go. Every little minute detail.
I knew the big things.
Right.
I knew the landscape from the get go because I've still got that old outline that I wrote for my teacher, and I'm still hanging on to that. But as far as a lot of the specifics and stuff go, no. I mean, I knew Dresden was going to wind up getting killed and solving his own murder in book 13. That's something like that big I knew.
Right.
The specific details of what was going to go on in that book, not so much. Until I'm there actually doing it. And I've got all this character stuff to handle and to be dealing with as we go along. So.
Yeah, because I would think after you're writing, the novels as you're going through, things are just going to naturally change and progress in a fashion that may change even from what you thought, right? Because characters are going to just learn to live for you.
I don't run into that problem as much because the characters, those people work for me, and if they start getting in the way of the story or me getting the deadline in on time, it's like, all right, people, we're all going to have a talk, and unless you want to meet up with a vat of acid, we are going to make sure that you are not interfering with my plot. And although generally I can't do it that way, instead I have to go back in and give them a good motivation to act in some other direction. But that works out too. So.
It's good when you have the power like that.
Yes, they are mine.
Yeah.
I have godlike power within my imaginary world. But yeah, I mean that's what I do is
Right.
I play D&D with myself and write it down. That's my job. You know, I follow my imaginary friends around in my head and I write down all their conversations. And somehow I've conned people into paying me for it. I don't know how that worked out, but so far it seems to be going all right.
Yeah, you need to share the secret because that's like the greatest job ever.
It's an awesome job. Are you kidding? It's amazing. You do have occasional problems, but it's like, oh my God, what awesome problems to have. Ow, my hand hurts from signing autographs for 3 hours this afternoon. That's an awesome problem.
So in Ghost Story, because all your books are available on Audible.
Right.
And they're all done. James Marsters come in. He did a great job.
Yes, he did.
You know, he's done fantastic work, except on Ghost Story.
Correct.
And obviously, I'm assuming you've heard and read a lot of the chatter around John Glover and his performance, and you know, and you've got rabid fans. Like when you read that or hear that, like, does it bother you that they get so upset that John Glover was there instead of James Marsters? Like, 'cause it seems to me like a very possessive, petty thing to think like, but
James couldn't be there.
Right.
It was as simple as that. It was there was a deadline. There was stuff that had to be done by then.
Right.
He'd had to cancel several times for various reasons and wound up not being able to meet his obligations under the contract. So they had to go get somebody else, and they had like 12 hours to find somebody.
wow.
Yeah, I'm glad they got John Glover. I mean,
Right.
you know, they could have done far worse
Right.
in terms of who they could have rounded up on such short notice. But yeah, I mean, it was simply a professional consideration, and people
Right.
can get upset about it if they want to. There's nothing I could do about that, you know. So I try not to let it bother me too much.
That's cool. Because I've listened to them all on Audible, right?
Uh-huh.
And because I do a lot of driving, I do a crazy amount of driving, so it's allowed me to listen to the novelizations that way. And you know, Marsters does a great job. But what I think about John, and if by the end of all of this, Marsters is able to do all 20 books plus the trilogy.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, 19 books plus the trilogy. And
No,
then-
it would be 20-ish.
yeah.
We'll
And
say 20-ish.
that works. Ish.
Then I feel less locked in.
Yeah. That if it turns out that John only did book 13, nothing against John, because I think he's a great actor. I think,
Right.
you know, and I thought he did a wonderful job on Ghost Story. But to me, the way I look at it, it kind of works because of that story. Like, he's not in his body. It's a different type of story.
Book 13 is a very different story than the rest of the series, and it was a necessary story for the development of the character.
Right.
After all the trauma and so on he'd gone through, but yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I mean, if there was going to be one story that Marsters couldn't be in on, that was the one. You know, for a different voice.
Yeah, because I think it's Grave Peril. I think it is the one where you do an intro on, and you mention how that this is you wanted to do it because this is also kind of where the book changes. There's a lot of new characters that are brought in that affect the story going forward.
Right.
And
That's where everybody says the series really starts in book 3. It's like, yeah, I don't think it really starts till book 7. But
really.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when it really that's when I felt like I really got my game together. Was by around book 7. But I mean that's just an issue of you know, I didn't know how to write a series because I'd never written one before, and you don't know how to do it until you go out and do it.
Right. Yeah, I marvel at it because it was like you could see that there's the changes even in your own style, like how the first 2 books they tell the story and they introduce a lot of the major characters, and then we get introduced to new major characters. You know, obviously Thomas and Bianca.
Right.
Not that she lasts very long, but
Right.
she has her bit, and then and of course Michael, which
Right.
opens up that whole universe. And you know, it's mind blowing when you're reading it because you're like, wow, this is what I thought was just going to be like a detective wizard story, turns into this global spanning, almost, you know, cataclysmic epic storyline where there's angels and demons and everything going on now.
That was always one of my main goal in developing magic and the supernatural
Right.
for the story world, was to figure out a way to incorporate absolutely everything. So that it didn't matter what kind of wackiness you run into or what kind of weird urban legend, that if I wanted to, I could incorporate that into the Dresden Files and find a way to make that work. And magic the same way. And of course, for that to happen, then I also had to address issues of faith, which I've tried to do as sensitively as possible and as intelligently as possible, which for me is a little limited. But that's also been a part of that universe that I wanted to create, and as we go forward, there'll be more of it. So,
your portrayal of Michael is what I would call, like, for me personally, the perfect version of somebody who has a lot of faith and believes in God and whatnot, because he's not judgmental of everybody else, right? And then you've got
Father Fortle.
Yes,
yeah.
Sorry. Very important character. Always seems to be right there at the right moment to give Harry that right little bit of advice.
Right, and it's not even like overwhelmingly. It's not an overwhelming holy advice either.
No.
It's no. Here's some practical advice that I can give to you because I've been around on the planet longer than you.
Right.
Yeah,
like there's that the one where they're talking and it's the one with where the story in which Molly's come back to the church, and they've and Charity's freaking out, and and everything, and the father and Harry are having that conversation, and Harry's like despondent almost, and father takes off his collar to say, like, hey, talk to your bartender. And he breaks out the
brings out the whiskey. Yeah,
it was a nice little moment, because it was like, oh, okay, this is another dude that I can really get behind. He's a man of faith, believes in what he believes, and strongly, but isn't going to, again, not judge somebody for their magical. Although it seems like he kind of is, he skated the line a little bit when you start to, like, some of the hints you've dropped about his history.
Oh yeah, he hasn't always been the guy he is now, and that's another thing I try and do with the characters, is to make sure that they're not. You never see somebody who's static, who's unchanging.
Right.
It's always somebody who has faced their own trials and has gone through their own changes as they've grown up. Mm-hmm. And all the characters are like that. And I don't always get to emphasize a lot of it. And Harry doesn't always see it. But the characters are always changing and learning around him. And it's a major headache to try and figure that out every book. It's like, okay, wait a minute, we're now bringing what's been going on in his life. Okay, now there's this whole backstory that's there. How much of that is going into the book? None of it, but it's important that you know it, Jim. Oh, great, thank you, brain, for making me work on that for 3 hours.